All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to Conversations on Retail. My name is Matt Fifer. Super excited to welcome Tom Logan, co-founder and CEO of Cohley today. Tom, thank you so much for making the time. You and I have been doing some business for a while, but we've never really had an opportunity to really get to know one another. So I've been looking forward to this.
Let's crack the hood open. Let's talk.
Yeah, but
Great
so
to be here
before
with
we,
you.
but yeah, before we dive into the deep end of the pool and dig into business, you've got a really interesting background, at least on paper. You've been a busy guy, even looking back at your college experience. I mean, it didn't seem like you maybe slept much. I'd love to talk a little bit about your background and
Yeah.
what was it about your background that created one ambition, but the second is sort of this entrepreneurial drive that has brought you to Coley. So did you grow up in an entrepreneurial house or?
I really appreciate that question, and I wish more people would ask it. So, yes, I did grow up in an entrepreneurial house. My dad was an entrepreneur in the energy sector, would essentially study government tax credits on alternative energy, alternative fuels, and worked out a great little arbitrage type business there. My grandfather was in a more traditional line of business with consumer products, specifically in the food space. He would do a lot of things up in Northern California. He would do private label for Trader Joe's, did those big bag of chips that you see at Costco under the Las Fortunitas brand. So got to actually work a little bit more closely with my grandfather's business. So had that bug, but I also would say, to be quite honest, I was like a little bit of a floundering kid, didn't always get the greatest grades through high school. But what started changing for me is there's that quote, I think it's Tim Ferriss thing that he talks about a lot, where like you're generally like a collection of the five closest friends that you have or the five closest
Mm,
people around you. I was very fortunate to just have incredible friends, incredibly smart, driven friends in college who are still my best friends today.
mm,
Um, Many of whom actually became entrepreneurs themselves. And I also I was uplifted by them. But out of college, when I saw them starting businesses, I was like, well, if these idiots can do it, then I guess I can probably do it too. So,
yeah,
so yeah, it was a
yeah,
collection of different experiences, and of course, had the benefit of yeah, a great extended network that's sort of just grown over time, very organically. And my success is just a collection of a lot of
yeah.
different people. Yeah.
How did you end up at Occidental? What did you intend to do occupationally as you entered your college studies? And then talk a little bit about your university experience.
I don't think I would have gotten in if I hadn't been third generation.
Mm,
And I think that's the honest truth. It's just a wonderfully just smart group of people at that school. Liberal arts. So, I was not studying in-depth business practices. I literally majored in the two things that you can't talk about in polite company, which politics and religion. It's my dad's
mm,
favorite joke. And now
mm.
that I'm turning into my dad, I might as well make the same damn joke
Right?
too. So, so yeah, I mean, that was, it was fascinating to study, but I hardly knew what a tech startup was when I was in college, to be perfectly honest. I knew that I was very distracted and engaged with social media. So when I had the opportunity to work in social media at a startup called Wildfire directly out of school, just
Mm,
purely based on alumni connections, I was like, wow, this can be a profession. So this huge distraction in my life.
mm.
This is something that's interesting, and I can apply myself and work hard and start learning. Sign me up. So that I'm
Yeah,
glad I took that 25K base salary and ran with that.
yeah. But again, back to
Yeah.
the university experience. I mean, you were
Yeah,
running a
sure.
student, you were running a student-led business. You were president of your fraternity. You
Yeah.
you helped found a future business leaders chapter on
Yeah. Yeah.
campus. You studied abroad. I mean, you were a
Did a
busy
lot.
busy guy. What drove that? Was it an expectation that was placed upon you, or was it you just trying to figure out who you were?
It's a really good question. I mean, with the storage company in particular, we just kind of saw a need, and actually, we encountered some headwinds from the university. They were like, "Well, this is a liability issue. There's some red tape on here," and then they just started doing summer storage themselves. So I guess we disrupted the university in that sense. Being involved with the fraternity was awesome. Great leadership experience. Taught me how to recruit, how to create a message, how to and create experiences that were compelling for our actual members. And then studying abroad in London and then traveling all over Europe for about that same time also gave me this like very worldly view that I didn't really have growing up,
Yeah.
which was wonderful. So thinking back on those college experiences is makes me smile. I'm glad you brought it up. just very, very much formative years that
Yeah.
sort of started laying the foundation for who I actually am today versus who I was in high school, which is like not the version of me that I necessarily think most fondly of. I mean, they're different stages, of course, but like I owe my college experience to a lot of where I am today.
Yeah, I would say it's, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would be atypical that one would find a better version of themselves during that college experience, and for you to have stretched and grown so much is really remarkable.
Yeah.
Talk about your first job experience after you graduated, and did they come to you? Did you go to them? And talk about what are some of the things that you learned early on in that first professional experience.
Yeah. So I came in as we call them sales associates, but essentially the equivalent of like a BDR role within a sales organization at a tech startup. It was hyper competitive, bullpen, long hours, 100 calls plus per day. But
Hmm.
the culture was such to where it didn't sound like the soulless like call center that it might, I don't know, it might come off as. It was actually like a
Hmm.
wonderfully rewarding experience. I learned the basic principles of how to sell, and we had a really compelling product at the time as well. We were helping consumer brands build their presences on Facebook at a time when they were viewing Facebook and their brand pages as equally, if not more important than their actual websites, which is crazy
Hmm.
because like when's the last time you went on a Facebook brand page? But we were doing things to up their follower counts with sweepstakes, video contests for engagement. And at the time too, I think it's important to remember that total follower count mattered a lot because they had a time-based feed and they were actually reaching the majority of their audience in an organic capacity. So it was like
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
really incredible growth lever for companies. So it was a very fun product to sell. And then fast forward a couple of years, we get acquired by Google, which is was an incredible experience. I cried like a baby that night. I was just thrilled for
Hmm.
everyone around me to see that success come to fruition. I was thrilled for our founders who still have a relationship with now and just view as incredible human beings and great leaders. And it was just like, I played a very small role in that company. I was like the 100th employee, but to see that organization grow and do a lot of things right and have great leadership and just an even better culture. I mean, a lot of the folks who came from that organization have now done a lot of really impactful things too. So in a
Yeah.
way, it was almost like a continuation of my college experience in the sense that I was around people who were smarter than me, people who were really absolutely driven to a T, and it was just like this uplifting force by being in a culture like that.
Yeah.
And then having a chance to work at Google is more of the same.
Yeah. I don't want to move too quickly into the story of Cohley, but I am curious at what point you sort of knew that you would eventually start your own company. And I wonder if being a part of that exit and being so emotionally attached and so emotionally bought into that to that company through and sort of going through the acquisition, did that add
Uh-huh.
fuel to the fire?
Yeah, the wildfire in this case. Yeah, I
Right.
actually still go back and watch the YouTube video. I'll share it with you. You can put it in the notes. It's our our head of ops and our designer put together this really emotional video announcing the acquisition in front of the whole company, and it was Sweet Disposition playing. And it was just it was just very emotional, very cool to look back on like the origins of the company, kind of where I came in. And yeah, I did want that. I did want to play a larger role. Um, and how Cohley came about was I'd left Google, much to my mom's dismay, because she loved telling her friends that I worked at Google,
Yeah.
and went to a small startup that was very focused on Pinterest analytics. It's called Pecora. And my view was like, okay, well, we rode this wave with Facebook. Like, I really view Pinterest as like a very high intent, likely to grow type of channel. So, like, why don't I just rinse and repeat? I think was my slightly flawed logic at the time. But I came in as director of customer success, sat on the exec team, so I had a little bit more say in what was going on. It was a less successful company as far as like total exit, but it also provided me with like maybe even more know-how and more learnings around how an org works, how it should be run, what not to do in a lot of ways as well, which I think can be equally as
Yeah.
valuable. Helped me actually experience those landmines so that we could and hopefully avoid a few here within the journey at Cohley. And then I wouldn't have started the company if it weren't for my confidence in my ability to work really effectively with my co-founder, Eric, who's, I say this all
Yeah.
the time, he's the smartest person I've ever worked with. He's just remarkably capable. He is the Energizer Bunny from a output standpoint. He's go go go, and we have a really wonderful working relationship.
Yeah. Now,
Very
where
very
did,
much function as equal parts. Yeah,
yeah, give me some background on Eric and talk about that relationship.
I hired him at that aforementioned company,
Oh, is that
Pecora,
right?
down
Okay.
in Silicon Valley. Yeah, so I hired him on the customer success team, and we got to work together very closely there. He kind of moved into more of like a product role, um, and became very fluent in how products are built, how to liaise between product teams and marketing teams, exec teams who are dictating a path for like a traditional PM, but a little bit more technical. And he also had the customer success prowess, which has really been like the backbone of our organization at Cohley, which is like software's top notch. It's incredible. We have a good sort of sales go to market engine, but I would say what's really created value and what's compounded into more growth has been really positive experiences working with our customer success team, who just like are highly strategic, genuinely care about our clients' success, visit clients in person, get to know them, and can help bring their goals to life and then some. They create the experience that is Coley.
Yeah. Share a little bit about some of the early conversations that you and he had that led to sort of a decision to start a company together.
It's hard because you're taking a lot of risk into the equation. So like you have to be in a position financially to work without pay for a period of time in certain cases. That's not always the case with the startup. For us, it was. You need to feel like you have a unique enough perspective or angle on the market to where you can actually make this thing work.
Yeah.
And then you also have to be you got to have you have to be in a life position beyond just resources to actually want to do it. I think
Mhm.
if I was in a position like I am now with a young young daughter to support and another on the way, it could be a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
Not impossible, just more complex. So
Mhm.
we ultimately waited. We gave ourselves a year, which I think was probably too short in retrospect, but
Mhm.
we just kind of we leaned on previous relationships that we had from Cora, from Wildfire, convinced some people to take some early chances on us. And even though we were an inferior product, we cared deeply. We moved the company from San Francisco to New York because all the companies we were competing with were in either in LA or in San Francisco, and all the companies that we all wanted to work with were in New York. So we were like, all right, well, what's going to give us the best chance here? It's probably being in New York. Like, and
Yeah.
maybe we can just get to know these people. We've been a very relationship driven business for being a tech company, I'd say. So that's a
Yeah.
theme that you'll hear. And yeah, I just kind of slowly but surely made it happen. And then 8.5 years later, it's turned into a really beautiful organization. I have more gray hair, for sure, but I wouldn't trade anything. I
Yeah.
wouldn't change a damn thing. Yeah.
What was your first vision, first iteration of Cohley?
Really embarrassing, like dating app type concept
Mm.
where you'd essentially swipe on a creator and then they would swipe back, and if you
Mhm.
match, then you could work out like an individual collaboration.
Mm.
It had to restructure that like crazy. Now the way that it works on Coley is that within a software platform, a brand launches a series of creative briefs. This is what the job entails. This is the type of content we want. This is who we're looking for. These are the terms and conditions, the compensation, timeline, etc. And then creators who are organized into a variety of different pockets based on skill sets, interests, etc. will then see those actual creative briefs, apply proactively to join the project, and then a brand will use a variety of filters to decide who they'd like to collaborate with. They can also bring in
Yeah.
folks from their ambassador program, real customers, and collaborate with some of their favorites in an ongoing fashion as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, early version was very it was very slow. It was for sure more reliant on human energy and capital to actually make it run. And that's okay. We found by using the platform ourselves to service customers, we, I think, spotted gaps and understood friction points, and
Yeah.
we kind of just dog fooded our own product, and our own frustrations became our a lot of what our roadmap entailed.
Yeah, but you were
So,
mostly
yeah.
you were mostly right. I mean, you refined it
Mhm.
a lot, obviously, but your original sort of idea was mostly right.
It was mostly right. We have benefited from major tailwinds since then around the overall demand for user generated content, but in particular, short form video was not really a thing that brands leaned on back then, particularly user generated short form video. Part of that was because part of the emergence there has been thanks to smartphone camera quality. Part of it has been the emergence of TikTok. Instagram stories or reels were not a thing back then. And it's been a phenomenal way for brands to lean on their customers, creators in the space who genuinely and authentically have an interest or a perspective on the product or the service,
Yeah.
and who can speak about it eloquently in a way that can communicate both like aspiration and function slash utility. So yeah, a lot of it has been really positive market impacts. I will say we did start with a thesis that this would become more of a need for brands. That brands would need more content, the ability to control outside content rather than just hope that their consumers create stuff organically. That's very difficult to rely on. Legalities are tricky. So um, and yeah, a lot of our experience and back to Pecora, how the way that evolved from a Pinterest platform was more into the user generated content place. So there's a big pivot at that company. Um, and so when we saw influencer marketing becoming a thing, that was like, okay, well, there is this ecosystem of creators. Why don't we just
Mhm.
harness them in a platform, help brands leverage those creators to get the content they need? And then now, fast forward to today, very focused on supporting the entirety of the consumer journey with the content that brands need to win.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your sweet spot in terms of client acquisition, customer acquisition, and what your typical engagement with them looks like.
So we've been through lots of iterations of this. I think, pretty much every startup goes through a process where they're thrilled that anyone would say yes to them,
Mm.
regardless of what the company profile looks like, who the person on the other end of the phone is. Doesn't matter. Anyone who's willing to pay you money early on is a win. But then over time, you start to realize that like there's significantly different profiles of churn, of success, of overall fit, and
You just
so
posted about this on LinkedIn. I was reading that this morning.
yeah, I got people pretty fired up about that.
Yeah.
Hit a nerve with some people, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of founders really got it. But you can't be everything to everyone. You do have to pick a
Yeah.
lane, and you have to build for a certain type of customer eventually.
Hmm.
And once we actually started focusing up market for us in the enterprise, things started really clicking. We were able to actually say, okay, we're not just building this for a marketer. We are building this for a certain type of marketer at an enterprise organization. That means like aligning with their workflows, their approvals process, their overall needs, their brand guidelines. It's just a much different type of company slash overall persona that we're now building for. And the more and more we've stayed true to that and fended off the temptation of like that one-off enterprise ask or that smaller company who's like, hey, we are a good fit, like here's why you should work with us. The
Hmm.
more we've like really stayed in our lane there and like true to who we are now, the more successful we've been, but it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course. I mean, it seems like technology and our ability to communicate and collaborate is
Yeah.
the democratization of innovation. Companies like yours have definitely got to be on their toes and continue to innovate and move forward. What are some of the areas of your business that you're the most excited about? Talk about how you sort of touch the Amazon ecosystem, for example.
Oh my gosh, you could talk about Amazon all day. It's funny, it's become a year ago, it wasn't nearly as large of a focus for us, but because Amazon has invested in partnership with us and from a macro level, they're very much invested in social proof content overall, social commerce with the introduction of Inspire, which I think is still in its nascency but picking up momentum. It's basically their answer to TikTok. And both companies have a variety of different advantages there. Of course, with Amazon, it's logistics, trust, et cetera. With TikTok, it's time on site and or time on app and things like that. But yeah, I mean, with Amazon, it's a lot of fun to work with brands to help them have more success on Amazon because very rarely for a company is Amazon not a focus.
Mhm.
Like a few years ago during COVID, brands were still kind of riding the like, we want to be D2C, higher margins. We don't need to be omni-channel.
So
Today,
expensive.
it just yeah, it's just too expensive now. Exactly. And there might be a rare one-off exception here and there,
Mhm.
but omni-channel success, balance, and continued incremental improvement is kind of the name of the game. So when we talk about Amazon, break it down into the three categories really. One is content for Inspire, which means activating creators within the Amazon network, influencer network, tagging multiple ASINs, et cetera. That's very successful in terms of driving people to purchase in general. So awesome to see the ROI actually come to fruition there. The second major piece is optimizing, helping them optimize like video reviews on detail pages or detail page videos, as they're calling them. Those are critical because the opportunity there on an Amazon detail page is to actually answer key objections, show the product from a functional standpoint, show unboxing. Um, and what we've noticed there is one, if you're able to have enough reviews on the actual detail page, you're not only increasing conversions by up to 10%, but you're also decreasing returns by 40% plus, which is, if you think about it, kind of like equally impactful. A very difficult thing for brands to account for is returns. So the detail page videos have become very, very critical. And again, that's a different type of video than an aspirational influencer type of video that might be introducing the brand. When we get down to the detail page, that step of the consumer journey is very much about like answering key questions, um, and giving them the confidence and understanding of the product that they need to feel comfortable making a purchase. Like I alluded to this a second ago. But if we can look at like the AI summaries or just do our own analyses of 1-star reviews, what are people struggling with this product? And maybe sometimes the brand actually needs to revisit the product itself. But oftentimes it's like just confusion around setup or yeah, setup or construction, or it's hey, this is a my humidifier is very difficult to clean. It's like, okay, well, actually it's not hard to clean, but like let me actually address that rather than try to
Yeah.
sweep those reviews under the rug and pretend like they don't exist. Let's actually come up with video that addresses it. And the third part would be like Amazon posts, which are now being pushed to different pockets within the Amazon shopping experience too. So you can tell I'm fired up about ways we can help
Yeah.
brands on Amazon. It's just an awesome opportunity, and we love to be connected to things that really matter to businesses, not just like pretty content.
Yeah. You've alluded to both headwinds and tailwinds, and in the past part of our conversation. In what ways is now the best of times and the worst of times for omni-channel sellers? In what ways is now really the best it's ever been? And then also talk in terms of the sort of the headwinds that you anticipate, where there might be something that a lot of brands just frankly aren't paying as much attention to as you think they should.
Yeah, on the headwinds front, we'll start there. It's never been easier to start a company, so which is a good thing and a bad thing. That means increased
Yeah,
competition, more
so
accountability,
crowded.
extremely crowded. I mean, even just during COVID, the number of companies that were introduced into the marketplace, challenger brands that you started hearing
Yeah.
about, seeing ads. I mean, that's great for the end consumer, very difficult for brands. Other
Hmm.
headwinds that you see are sure the deprecation of cookies has changed like targeting parameters quite a bit. CACs, as you alluded to earlier, have become very difficult, and customer acquisition costs, especially in a year where we're looking at presidential election and the Olympics competing for eyeballs. There's only so many ads that can be served.
Yeah.
So it's a finite number, so naturally it's going to be more difficult, especially with political spend. So that's just going to continuously make it more and more important for brands to not only do a better job with their actual ad creative, do a better job of conveying messaging, but also do a really good job with their retention marketing and their loyalty, their lifetime value of their customers. Part of that is of course like systematic email flows, introduction of complementary products, subscriptions, things like that. But you also got to make really good products that people continue to love and continue to need and want to buy more of. So, if you look at where like a Casper went wrong, people only need so many mattresses.
Yeah.
They failed to kind of develop a lifestyle brand that included complementary products that would take customer lifetime value higher. So those are some of the headwinds. You have a great perspective on this? Any other headwinds that you want to note?
It's so funny. Most of the conversations I'm having sort of at least have some component of what you just shared. Again, we talk about the democratization of innovation. It's never been easier to start a company. It's never been easier to launch a brand. Never been easier to find somebody that can, co-pack and package. And it's just never been easier to go to market. And it's a good and it's a bad. And
Yeah.
I would say that the likelihood of success has gone down even as the ease of entry has gone up. I also think, and,
Hmm.
and I'm learning a lot about this. It seems like that great creative is sort of kind of in a renaissance stage, right? Where I think we could spend our way to making bad creative deliver some results, and now with so much spending, we're kind of going back to the foundation of no, let's be great storytellers, and I think that's a really interesting trend.
Spot on. It's almost like a reversion back to what sort of the core tenets of marketing were a decade or two ago. Like tell
Yeah,
great, compelling stories, explain why you're a business in the first place. Why does your product exist? How
yeah,
does it stack up to competitors? Why is it unique? Who is it for? And then give me some third party social proof from real people, consumers, creators, whoever they might be, talking about how this product or service has actually benefited them and why the price makes sense.
yeah.
So yeah.
I think to some extent the ability to pay for advertising has made us lazy as storytellers, and now it's just going to be
Hmm.
all that more important that we convey our message quickly and grab
Yeah.
attention.
And the one thing that's different than like maybe the Mad Men era of like, oh my God, John Hamm just like marketed a hula hoop perfectly is that
Hmm.
it's also critical for brands to be doing a ton of testing.
Mm.
So that's not necessarily something that you could do when you're talking about a big billboard or a magazine ad back in the day.
Yeah.
But you have the ability to launch so much different creative. If we just look at Meta, for example, you can run so many different tests and start to get data back within just like 24 hours, assuming the ad spend's high enough or the budget's
Mm.
high enough. So I mean, to be able to run those micro tests, constantly validate things, uh, and run these sophisticated testing plays. I mean, it's just those are the companies that are able to win and create separation, and the ones that are still married to brand ethos, what our founder thinks our brand should be, and letting like even just letting the creative director's voice be the loudest one in the room. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think the data should be the loudest voice in the room, and
Yeah.
of course, you want to stand for something. You want to stay within the bounds of what your brand is, but within that, you should be testing rapidly, and you should be okay being wrong. There's literally no extra credit for having a creative idea that wins over another one. It doesn't matter. Like what you're coming back to is what's performing in the market and how do we continuously improve on this, assuming that your goal is to actually grow and acquire more customers. If it's just to like make your founder happy, like you could do that too.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you two questions. I want you to answer one while you're thinking about the other.
Oh
What's
wow.
what's the what's the future look like for Cohley? Talk about your team and its capabilities and sort of what the next iteration of Cohley looks like. And then the question I want you to sort of daydream about as you're answering that very simple question is, if you were to start another company today based on sort of the lay of the land and artificial intelligence and rapidly changing marketplace, et cetera, what kind of business would you be the most compelled to start today?
Okay, you give me a lot of intellectual credit for being able to noodle on one while I answer one, but I think I can do it. because these
I
are
bet you
these are
can.
topics that I think about quite often. Okay, so the future of Coley, I think, the more we can understand the performance of content across a variety of different channel segments, the more we can start to guide the content creation process. So we very much view it like a feedback loop in the sense that you have consumer insights, you have brand guidelines, all of these good things sort of thrown in the pot, but you have this flywheel that's based on the performance of the content and constant learning. And that flywheel keeps spinning and it keeps spitting out different types of content that's very likely to perform based on what we've seen either in a specific category or specifically for that brand. That could also be dependent on the channel, right? As you know, Walmart commands a different type of story, a different type of content than a Target does, for example. Target more product, mission driven product quality, things like that. The why behind the brand. Walmart a little bit more about utility, function, price, discernment, etc. So the more we can understand what the brand is trying to achieve with the content, where they're trying to achieve it, what's performed particularly well. The idea here is that we can take the guesswork out of content and actually have data just spin this wheel so that I don't have to guess about what type of content I should test. It's already given me different creative iterations that I can throw out, and I'll just incrementally improve. Like there's that crazy stat where like 80% of the canopy in the Amazon rainforest is dominated by like one tree. That tree grows like a centimeter faster than on an annual basis than like the other competing trees. But like, well, that's all you have to be to dominate the canopy is just to be that little bit better.
Yeah.
So we're looking for angles, and that's what we think we can power with the introduction of machine learning, AI, and just like performance inputs across all
Yeah.
these different critical channels. So I think we do a lot with that. I think we do a lot with consumer research as well that helps to feed this and contextualize some of these learnings to better provide marketers with directional insight. And then, the other piece there around the future of the company, I think it's expanding the definition of what a creator is. So like when people think of content creators now, typically your mind goes to influencer. Influencer is just like a really good looking person talking about a product, incorporating into their life, whatever. I think the future of what we're seeing now is like some of the trust around those types of individuals is starting to decay a bit. Because you're like, well, hey, you just worked with like 6 companies this past week, and like you said, things were contradictory. So like you can lose a little bit of authenticity. What I think the definition of creator will continue to encompass is real consumers talking about the product, their real buying process, why they enjoyed it, and then getting discounts for that or getting additional product from the brand, that almost in turn builds loyalty with that customer too. So want to hear from real customers in order to help sell my products if I'm a brand, not just like LeBron James or a really good looking influencer. And in terms of a company that I would start today, thought about this a lot. I think it would certainly it would have to be something in the AI realm. What that might be, I'm not exactly sure. I think it'd probably be around specific to like ad testing, and it'd be the type of layer on that really understands exactly what's going on with that performance, and ideally like maybe even using AI to take creative iterations. So I have 10 photos I'm working with. How can I come spin these into 50 different creative iterations? And maybe it's even using licensing the likeness of a creator or an individual, and then using AI to come up with a variety of different things that person says. Like we were talking about this morning, but like if Tupac can make an AI diss track in 2024, there's no reason you couldn't sort of license an individual's likeness to do the same type of thing. And there's already some work going into that as well. I do think that's an important distinction because that's brand messaging versus like the real voice of the shopper. But I do think that content and AI are going to converge in a way that's like very, very interesting. So obviously that's not fleshed out. If I had that fully fleshed out, I probably already would have started the business. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next year. Eric's also my co-founder is also very passionate about starting a BCC texting company because I think he thinks it'd be funny. But I don't think that's our imminent path. He likes
Yeah.
to joke about it though.
Yeah. So you're really easy to find and connect with on
Very.
LinkedIn. But what's the best way for people to engage with Cohley?
Yeah. Um, my email is tom at Cohley.com. Cohley.com, Cohley is a phenomenal resource. I'm really proud of the work that the marketing folks and the team did with the site. In terms of engaging with us, we'll work with clients on a variety of different engagement types. Typically, the main lever up or down in terms of like scope is how many creative briefs they need or they want to run. A brief typically includes 10 to 20 hand selected individuals um, who are who are then taking in the product or service, speaking about it, experiencing it, and then speaking about it, submitting content for approval. So we'll do a lot of things along those lines, and then more and more we're working with. I'm sure, yeah, Dan and the Voice of the Shopper team has certainly talked to you about this, but more and more we're turning to brand CRMs, real customers to get these authentic voices of their shoppers. What do they love about it, and how can they tap into that sentiment, that information conveyed from real shoppers, real customers? How can they use that to uh, convey more trust, convey information, and bring more people across the finish line?
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question, and that is, we talked a couple times now about democratization of innovation and the number of startups and the number of brands,
Yeah.
and what's it going to take for these challenger brands to survive? As you see so much consolidation, big brands buying big brands, and
Yeah.
doing everything they can, especially to secure the in-store environment. And at some point, you got to think, even though I think retailers believe that they can solve for over assortment by way, algorithmically, but at some
Mhm.
point you run the risk of being over assorted even online. So what's it going to take for challenger brands of today and tomorrow to survive and thrive?
Yeah, and even sort of within that, you have challenger brands or upstart brands being incubated by and backed by huge brands. So really,
Yeah.
are they even really challenger
No,
brands?
not
Not
what those
really.
budgets are not. Yeah.
They just kind of masquerading. They're just
Mhm.
masquerading. So I always laugh when I hear like someone's an entrepreneur. It's like no, you're not. Like because you don't have
Yeah.
the risk factors of actually being an entrepreneur. So to me that doesn't quite add up. But yeah, I think there's well, one, you obviously have to have a great product, and you can't just be knocking off an existing product. I
Mhm.
think you need to come with something that's compelling that the market really does want, that solves like real problems, or real or answers real like demands from the market for a product. So
Yeah.
one,
Almost
like I think that's
category invention.
obvious.
Yeah.
Exactly. Almost, right? Like if you stick a new, I've noticed that a lot of like the food and beverage brands that get like major funding and get like major momentum are like um, it would be like the dairy-free mayo or the gluten-free chocolate or ways to like reinvent certain categories that have been like historically in place for a while. Or like a company like Kite Hill has done like dairy-free cheese that people love, things
Mhm.
like that like doesn't even make sense when you think about it, but they've been able to do it. Hampton Creek is another one that's Bill Gates has backed. Those are just examples. So yeah, I mean, I think you do need a unique POV, a unique product. But beyond that, assuming that like you do have that, but you're just outflanked from a resource standpoint, you got to get scrappier with your testing,
Mhm.
and you have to be able to just pivot very quickly. And it's almost like if you're going to be the David to the Goliath, you know, I guess historically speaking, David would have won because he was more nimble, a little bit smarter, a little bit more strategic, and was able to move faster. Just to bring that back to the big brands. Big brands tend to have a lot of red tape. They tend to move a little bit more slowly. It takes a lot for them to move off of their existing position. The classic thing with the challenger brand is that they have the ability to be nimble and test, and fail fast and make mistakes. And eventually, maybe that advantage of speed and lack of red tape and institutional plaque that ends up actually translating to real growth and success. And it's also, as a part of that scrappiness, it's embracing emerging channels maybe before large brands did. So a couple of years ago, that would be TikTok.
Yeah.
Awesome opportunity. Even before that, a lot of different emerging channels pop up. So,
Yeah.
you know, never easy, of course, to be a true challenger. But anything you want to add there? Again, you have fantastic insights across the board here.
No, I think so much of what you said is exactly right. I think it's going to take you know, solving the same problems differently, introducing problems that consumers don't yet know fully that they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reiteration, if not reinvention, of categories. I think it's an exciting time. I think the one thing that will never change is that consumers always want new. There's always a demand for new, and so I
Totally.
don't think that'll ever change. So yeah,
Well
very
said.
good. All
Very well
right,
said.
Tom Logan, co-founder and CEO of Cohley. You're a fascinating guy. You've got a fascinating organization. Congratulations
Same to
on
you.
your success. Congratulations on the growth of your business and the growth of your family. And looking forward to keeping up with both. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you, Matt. Thank you.
Have a great day.